Picture this. You just watched a YouTube video breaking down why seed oils are terrible for your health. Later that day, you're at a friend's house for dinner, and while he's cooking, you casually mention, seed oils are actually really unhealthy. Curious, your friend asks, wait, really? Why are they unhealthy? You start strong, rattling off a few points from the video you watched earlier, but then he asks you to go deeper. Suddenly, you're stuck. The details are blurry. Those key facts you thought you had locked in are gone, and you're left scrambling for an explanation. Now, you feel like an idiot. We've all been there. We watch a video, listen to a podcast, read a news article, or even read a textbook, then feel qualified enough to explain that concept to others. This is a common pitfall all of us humans experience. So how do we go from simply learning information to genuinely remembering and understanding these concepts deeply? Well, to learn how to remember information, you have to understand how your brain works. Your brain is like a bucket with a hole in the bottom. When you first learn something, like seed oils, it gets poured into the bucket, sitting in something called short-term memory. But here's the problem. If you don't do anything with that information, it slowly drains out. Now imagine, a few weeks later, you're back at your friend's house for dinner, but this time, there are even more people there. The conversation turns to health again, and your friend asks you to explain seed oils for the group. Suddenly, you blank. You know you learned it. You remember telling your friend last time, but those easy key facts completely disappeared. That's because your brain never moved the information into long-term storage. Long-term memory is like a sealed container where your brain locks important information in for the long haul. But how can we shift things from our short-term memory into our long-term memory? This takes us to the first technique I like to call story recall. Story recall is a way of hacking your brain's natural preference for stories to make information stick. Think about it. Humans have been passing down knowledge through stories for thousands of years. We forget random numbers and disconnected facts all the time, but we remember the plot of a movie we saw 5 years ago. Why? Because stories create connections, and connections make information easier to remember. Your brain isn't designed to remember random, isolated facts. It's designed to recognize patterns in narratives. That's why ancient cultures passed down their history through storytelling long before writing ever existed. It's why the best teachers, speakers, and leaders don't just throw information at you. They tell stories that make the ideas come alive. The key here isn't just to hear or read something. It's to repackage it in a way that your brain actually wants to store. Instead of memorizing dry facts, turn them into narratives, analogies, or mental pictures. When you hear something new, stop and ask yourself, how can I make this a story? What does this remind me of? And how would I explain this to someone using a real-life example? The more vivid the connection, the more likely it is to stick. But here's the real cheat code. This technique doesn't just help you remember better, but it also makes you more interesting. When you store information as a story, not only is it easier to recall, but when you explain it to someone else, you naturally tell it as a story, which makes you way more engaging to listen to. At its core, humans are wired for storytelling. We remember stories better, and we pay more attention to people who tell them well. So by using this technique, you're not just locking in knowledge, you're also becoming someone people actually want to hear from. The second technique for remembering information that you learn is something called spaced repetition. Think back to the last time you were cramming one day before an exam. If you've crammed for lots of exams in the past, you may have noticed that you're able to remember a lot of the concepts, but for only the day of the exam. If someone asked you to recall that information a week later, you'd remember almost nothing. This tells us that all of the information you learned was stored only in the short-term memory. To make it stick for the long term, you need to come back to the information after it's left your mind. Now imagine that exam you were studying for. Instead of never looking at the exam materials again, you decide to study a week after the exam, then another week after that, then keep going. What do you think is going to happen? Well, you're going to learn, then forget that information. Then you'll come back, relearn what you forgot, like a review session, then a week later, you'll forget slightly less. The more times you repeat this process, the more you'll begin to remember for the long term. If you truly want to learn and remember something deeply, it constantly has to be hammered into your mind. But spaced repetition isn't the only way to strengthen memory. This takes us to the third technique called sensory anchors. Think about it. Have you ever smelled a certain cologne or perfume and instantly remembered a person from years ago? Or heard a song that took you right back to a specific moment in your life? That's because memories are deeply connected to our senses. When you're studying or learning something new, you can take advantage of this by deliberately tying the information to a specific sensory experience. For example, taste, chewing a unique flavor of gum while studying, then chewing the same gum during your exam. Touch, wearing a specific hoodie or bracelet while learning, then wearing it again when you need to recall that knowledge. Smell, using a certain cologne or perfume while practicing for a speech, then bringing that scent back when you need to present that speech. But that's not all. You can make your memory even stronger by engaging multiple senses at the same time. If you're reading a book, try listening to the audiobook while following along in a physical copy and underlining key ideas. It's like following along with song lyrics. You remember them much better when you're reading the words as you listen. The more senses you involve, the deeper the information sticks. At the end of the day, realize that you don't have to be an expert in every single topic to ever exist. It's part of the beauty of the human experience. We're never complete, never perfect, and there's always more that we can learn. Pick a few fields that you really love and try to master those. Now, just in case you can't remember how to remember, here's a cheat sheet for you to screenshot and come back to later so it sticks in your long-term memory. If this helped you, share it with a friend who loves to learn new things, and don't forget to subscribe. I'll see you in the next one.